Welcome, dear students. In the current session, I would focus on the changing vocabulary during the period from 1500 to 1650. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would be able to understand what were those conditions, both on the socio-political and cultural levels, that led towards these changes. Well, my dear students, whenever there are changes in a language, there are so many factors that work in the background. Same was the case with English language. If we look at the history of English language during the Middle English period, we can notice that there were two important happenings. One, the Norman conquest, the other, the Black Death. And I think both of these events played a great role in determining the future of the language. However, apart from these two important factors, there were certain general circumstances or the more general conditions that also had influence or impact on the dimensions of the changes in the language. If we try to trace the history of the beginning of the modern English times, we may say that it started in 1500. Now, certain of those new conditions came into play, and those conditions that were previously working or operating, now they died off. They were not working anymore. My dear students, in all these situations, there were many other factors that were causing towards the development and progress in the vocabulary of English language. And in fact, these were the times of Renaissance were the times when there were radical changes in the society, industry was being introduced, the socio-political setups were changing, there was a rise in the middle class, and the French nobility was giving up their French language as well. In all these conditions, the vocabulary of the times changed a lot. There were certain other factors that contributed in some ways. One of the greatest factors that contributed a lot towards the changes in language overall and in vocabulary as well is the invention of printing press. As soon as printing press was introduced in England, a lot of books were printed and disseminated. Now, through this process, people would come across the reading materials, and because now it is to be provided to a larger readership, their interests would be catered for and more stuff would be written in English. Another factor was the spread of education. Now, the domain of education was not limited to the nobility. Before this, it was only the upper class who could afford education. Now, it was spreading rapidly, and all the masses tried to provide education to their children. The third important factor is the improvement in the means of communication. With the advancement of technology, the means of communication became cheaper and more available to people. Also, traveling became easier and more affordable. All these factors contributed towards bringing in influences from the surroundings to English language. And of course, this added to the vocabulary of English language as well. Well, when we look at the changes in the general sense, when we look at how vocabulary was influenced in relation to other aspects, for example, grammar, we can safely claim that vocabulary had radical changes, whereas in comparison or contrast to this, grammar had changes that were very, very, conservative. When we say that the changes in vocabulary were radical, what we mean by that is that it was of progressive nature. It also means that it was ready to adopt and to adapt new words. So basically, the word radical, when used here for vocabulary, it also refers to the acceptability or, the readiness of language to promote new vocabulary. Now all these conditions are favorable to the spread of the ideas and stimulating the growth of vocabulary because, advancements in science were being made, people were interested in reading, people were interested in knowing what was going on around in the world. So this spirit of Renaissance that promoted learning in general had a great influence on English language and on the vocabulary, because in all these circumstances where every day there would be something new, new words were, of course, needed. These were the times when there were so many new things or happenings for which English language did not have suitable words already existing in its fund. So there was a need, of course, to incorporate new words. When we compare this change or the nature of change in the vocabulary of the early modern English times or the Renaissance times with the Middle English, we would see that this is a total opposite. Overall, it is opposite to the nature of vocabulary or the nature of spread of vocabulary as it was in the Middle Ages times. In the times of Middle Ages, especially, the first half of it, there were changes in vocabulary, but they were very slow, and those changes were not of great significance. However, Renaissance with it brought a lot of new words that were added to English language, and most of them have survived through the times till today.